Welcome everyone, I'm super excited to be joining you again. I'm here with our CEO and founder, Toli. Toli, it's amazing to have you here. Let's make a conversation happen today. We have some really interesting topics like AI in food, Facebook groups and AI. We also are going to talk about LA fires and how some scams are going on that side. Diabetes, doctor being deepfaked, a French woman being scammed by Brad Pitt, and Meta replacing its engineers with AI. So let's start with the first one, AI in food. There's an interesting article about Zomato banning AI in their food pictures. Have you heard the story? Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Zomato is the Yelp of India, is the easiest way to say it. They provide reviews and I believe food delivery as well. Their CEO made a decision for their content moderation so that user-generated content as well as coming from restaurants is none of it is to be AI generated. Personally, I think it's a great thing. When I look up a restaurant in Yelp or Google reviews or any one of those sites, I would not want to see AI generated images of the food I'm about to feed myself and my kids and my wife and my family. I think that's misrepresentation of what you're actually getting, and I think it's a really great initiative by the team there to prevent it.
Because there's some really funny pictures, especially pop-up restaurants now have this tendency to have an entire menu where everything you look at, not a single thing on the menu is real, it's all AI. But I love to play devil's advocate. The whole food marketing online has always been a little bit pumped up, right? They'd put some glazing on the burgers to make them look good. They would put fake ingredients like silicone-based stuff to make stuff look right and plump. And all those different tricks that have been used for years now. How different is this, really? Just a little bit more advanced.
I don't think I've ever gotten a burger that looks like one in a commercial. So I 100% agree with you. It's the very best version that's ever been produced. It's what it's what's shared in the marketing. But with that said, at least it's real. At least you're using, hopefully, the same kind of ingredients and the same, the same things that a consumer should expect to receive. But when you're taking AI-generated content, like now we're in the perfect representation of something that's not even real. So I think that's where you cross the line. Like I get it, a restaurant or a fast food place, picture of the food you're about to get looks scrumptious and delicious and a lot bigger than what you usually get in reality, where we've all had that experience. But when you take a generated version of that, I think we're crossing the line, and now the things that you're showing aren't even real. That's the things that are in there. It's not even the best version of it. It's a completely fake version of it, and I think that's where we cross the line for what we're misrepresenting for the food.
At least they're trying, even though they might have some improvements on the ones they make for commercials. I agree. At least we're trying. So let's now jump into the next topic, which is Facebook groups. We all have mixed feelings about them. They are great. Some people think they're not so great. But the introduction of AI in Facebook groups has completely changed the game. How has your experience been, and how do you think AI affects Facebook groups?
Frankly, destroy them. There's a few that my wife and I are part of, and she's the one who actually flagged them for me. They're photography related, and I'll highlight one, the National Geographic group or Geography group. And I think it's about 1.5 or 1.8 million members, something like that. So a very large group. And now there is a ton of AI generated content in there. So National Geographic has those really famous covers of beautiful imagery of wildlife and nature, since I believe the 80s. They've been doing this, and now they have a really great Facebook group where people sharing wildlife. But now if you're adding in AI generated versions of that and people can't tell the difference, I think, Johnny, when we were talking about this, I highlighted one. I was like, this is completely fake. You're like, I had no idea. And you do this for a living. So imagine just random people scrolling through their phone and they really have no idea. So, and once you find out that someone's posting AI generated content, are you going to believe even the real content on there? So that's where you kind of lose the authenticity. I would argue the integrity of the content being posted in there. So when you start mixing in real with AI, but the premise of the group was real or is real, I think it can ruin the whole dynamic of it, and over time, those groups will die off if people can't trust what they see as real anymore.
There's a lot of different social medias, from Instagram to Facebook to Reddit to TikTok, but for some reason, Facebook has this reputation of being flooded with AI content. And I wonder if that is because Facebook tends to have an older demographic. What are your thoughts on that?
I would generally agree. I think those use cases are more prominent because the older demographic might not be as educated on what's happening with AI generated content. So it's not that the other platforms are not experiencing it. More people are just more aware of how to look at, question everything is the saying I like nowadays. Question what you see, question what you hear. Too good to be true probably is, whether it's a burger or a beautiful picture of a lion. So that's that. I think that the demographic there is on the older side, but I also think they're the most susceptible to some of the, to being misinformed, to being tricked, to believing an AI generated image is real or is not. And even in our own company, AI or not, I talk to our users every single day, and I love all of our users. But there's a few that definitely skewed older, and they're like, so if you're telling me that this piece of content, this image, is AI generated, what does that actually mean? Is it not real? So even when you provide that, they're still like, wait, does that mean it's not real? So that's what I think is happening. And then when you look at these groups like National Geographic, a brand that's been around since 80s, maybe even the 70s, then those users who've been trusting this brand for a long time, and the content produced associated with the brand, now it's AI generated, like how do you flip that switch? If for 40, 50 years it's been real, and now 6 months, now it's AI generated. So I think that's the hard part, and I just think it's happening on social media very prominently, but it's happening everywhere, and everyone needs to be observing and consuming content with a very wary eye, and questioning what they see and what they hear.
Exactly. This is definitely a new dawn, a new era of the internet that we're entering, and we're ill-prepared, but hopefully companies like AI or not will help us navigate these tricky waters.
We're working on it.
Yes! And still on the topic of older folk, there's a lot of, and a big wave as well, of scammers taking advantage of this new technology that facilitates their jobs very much. And there's a lot of topics that I want to cover here. But maybe we can start with the story of the diabetes doctor Deepfake. Do you know that story? Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, there was a doctor who is a famous diabetes doctor, and his imagery was used to create a fake replica of him, a deep fake replica of him, to promote other types of health content, and it was used to fool people. Like, there's so many social studies about, even if someone wears a lab coat, they're more believable. Like, if you just put on a lab coat and you're like, hey, I know things because I'm wearing this lab coat, and you're not even representing yourself as a doctor, you become more believable with health content. So now you're doing that times 100, where you're representing a fake doctor and trying to provide fake health information about, in this case, diabetes. And very, very serious topic. I have family members with diabetes, so misrepresentation of things like that really becomes a life or death scenario.
One of those things, like you said, they're not only impersonating and having the white coat effect, but also taking the likeness and the overall image and brand that someone has built for them and using it to promote fake and scammy products for someone who has an health issue. So it's definitely super negative and tricky.
Yeah, and just to tie it all together, I believe the diabetes doctor who was deepfaked. The video was actually on Facebook. It said like, hey, you know that medicine I probably prescribed you? Stop taking it. Trust me, try these gummies instead.
Wow, that sucks. And one other topic, especially now that it's really on everyone's minds, is the LA fires. And I've heard some scams have come from that as well, especially for insurance companies. What do you know about that?
Yeah, so my heart goes out to everyone affected by this. I lived in Southern California for 5 years, 2.5 years in LA. And I went to school in LA, so I love the area. Still have a lot of really good friends who I'm texting. I had one of my friends. He was like, "Oh, I'm safe. The fire's only 2 miles away." I'm like, "Oh my God, 2 miles away!" I'm like, "That's really close." You know, you can see like the sky lit up in the middle of the night. So that's where things are at. It's a very serious and dire situation. But when that happens, it's like fraudsters. It's like a shark who smells blood in the water. So they take advantage of it. So whether it's looting of houses who, people escape, which is terrible in itself, then will come the insurance scams. So we witnessed this a couple months ago where there was flooding in Spain. Very, very terrible, and a lot were affected by it. And insurance companies were, no pun intended, flooded with insurance claims. And a lot of them then became fake. So because they're overwhelmed with the volume, and typically speaking, most insurance claims go through a manual review process, meaning they have an analyst or a fraud specialist who are looking at these claims and like, oh, flood damage, or in this case, fire damage. It looks like the right area, and they're clicking approve a lot probably because they're just so overwhelmed with the amount of volume and how many people's lives are affected, that it becomes extremely ripe and a great playground for fraudsters to take advantage of this and be like, hey, my house was affected, I was affected by the fires. It's very terrible, and it actually has a negative effect on everyone, because at the end of the day, anyone who has any kind of insurance then has to pay for this at the end of the day from the fraudsters taking advantage of it. But AI has created a much easier and new avenue for this to be done. And as insurance companies becoming, they're right now, the firefighters are overwhelmed. When that stops in a week or whatever, in days, hopefully, God willing, when the fires get under control, then the insurance companies are going to be extreme. When everyone starts going back to their homes and be like assessing their damage and then submitting the claims, that's when fraudsters are going to strike. And a lot of that content, a lot of those pictures, and a lot of those claims are actually going to be AI generated.
Great point. Is there anything in your mind or any way for people to protect themselves or try and avoid? I know it's a tricky situation. Do you have any advice for people out there?
I think for people, one, it's stay safe. And as individuals, there's not much we can do. We just hope for the best, and we hope that insurance companies do right by all those affected individuals. The insurance companies, however, probably need to take a filter through like all of those images, right? We, not to insert our own company into it, but yeah or not, I mean, we do these checks in sub 1 second. So if you put a filter through every image submitted and start weeding out the ones who are, the images that are manipulated or AI generated, you should really question the motive of the people behind that submitted those images. Because what you don't want to do is have that small percentage of people affect the ones who are actually going through this in reality. So for people, most people are good by nature. But then for insurance companies, you got to filter out the bad. You got to, as I'm sure they do already, but in their case, usually done through manual claims. But now you need a filter to go through this to make sure that indeed, it was a real image, or if it's AI, filter out those people and take a hard look at what that user is trying to achieve.
Continue on the scam wave, because it never ends really. There was this really famous clip of Brad Pitt that scammed a French lady, but turns out it wasn't really Brad Pitt. Do you know what happened?
Oh man, so one, my heart goes out to this family because they were affected quite negatively by this whole thing. It's, I think it's a catfishing situation with a famous deepfake. So what happened was a scammer impersonated, deepfaked Brad Pitt that he was in the hospital and needed money. So jokes aside of how ludicrous this sounds of Brad Pitt needing money or any of the things, the lady was tricked into giving about $800,000 to the scammer, as she thought she was helping Brad Pitt and that Brad Pitt was indeed in love with her. I would argue this is an even sadder case, that she actually ended up divorcing her husband. That's what I mean, my heart goes out to the whole family. So without ever meeting or hearing, or maybe, the voice was deepfaked too if they did phone calls. So there's pictures of Brad Pitt in a hospital giving blood. There's a picture of him like holding up a sign. I think the lady's name was Anne, like, "I love you, Anne," and it's like a picture of him holding up a sign from a hospital bed. And like the pictures are really real. And the heart wants what the heart wants, or in this case, the eyes believe what the heart wants, or something to that effect. And this lady, God bless her heart, believed that the real Brad Pitt was indeed in a lot of trouble, and he had some monetary issues, and he was in a hospital bed, and he needed her help, and that he was also in love with this lady, and she ended up giving him $800,000, divorcing her husband, and the scammer just went away. And now that's and now I'm sure that family's going through a lot, but it definitely highlights like the extent that catfishing and that impersonations can have on people and scams. It's a really sad example, but one that I don't think we've seen the end of.
It's like these scammers are getting better and better with technology at exploiting people's vulnerabilities. And do you think this points to a larger societal failure? This is gonna get deep for a second. Of us not being able to protect these most vulnerable people, which will be the first to be basically attacked by these AI scams that are only going to get better and better.
Yeah, I do. So one, on the technology front, I think every technology, since the beginning of humanity, has always been used for good and bad. So, the start of the internet, internet created, a sea of knowledge and created new industries, but also created a lot of bad misinformation, propaganda, 4chan, and a lot of bad as well. Streaming creates a lot of new types of content and entertainment, but also created people doing illegal things, and even terrorists using this platforms like that to do their messages. Cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, wherever we stand on it, it created a new value of money, especially for people in countries where their local currency was under risk by governments. But at the same time, it created new ways to launder money and new ways for fraudsters to move money illegally. So this technology with AI and deepfake is no different whatsoever. There's a lot of good being done with it, a lot of new types of content, a lot of new types of information and entertainment, but also bad. So the fraudsters immediately, they're usually the innovators. I hate to say it, but they're actually a lot of times the innovators and the first users, the early users of these new technologies. And immediately they're going to go to someone's emotions, just like whether it's Brad Pitt, whether it's an insurance company going through a natural disaster, and those are the most susceptible people or companies, and they will attack them and use their emotions against them. And these are the new tools, the new technologies that they're using. So they're 100% the targets, and a lot of times the most susceptible, because the emotions and the things that they believe are used against them, and they are led to believe things that are actually not real.
Yeah. Do you believe this will be solved through higher regulation, or should people take more accountability?
I think we're already too late for regulation, to be 100% honest. So I think the tools that are already in existence, even if every government around the world got together and shook hands and said, as crazy as ludicrous as this sounds, and says, hey, let's all agree to ban deepfakes and AI generate content for bad. Cool. Break. It's still already too late. The tools are already out there. There's a lot of open source tools, meaning that the code can be downloaded on your own computer and you can do whatever you want with it, and you're not online, and those things are already in existence. So no one's going to return them to sender, let alone fraudsters. In fact, there's places like in North Korea where they're using these tools and creating models specifically for bad purposes. So are they gonna stop? Absolutely not. It's just the new form of fraud that they commit. So I think there is going to be an adjustment period, just like we talked about for insurance companies. Instead of relying on your eyes for every check that you do, I think the same thing is going to be an adjustment period for people, unfortunately, as well. Of whether, I think the imagery is getting better and better by the day. I can tell a lot of times personally, and I look at this stuff all day, every day. Audio, I think, is already there. And I think there's going to be an adjustment period. And actually, it's a big reason why we even give a free tier for AI or not for every user, every person that ever wants to come in and try it, because I believe, I have a role to play, and that's to help protect people, and that's what I'm building AI or not for. So, but I do think there's going to be quite an adjustment period for individuals as well as for companies to, a period of, since the beginning of time, we trusted our eyes and ears and our senses, and now we can no longer do so without questioning what we see or what we hear as real.
This is a really fascinating topic. Do you have any stories about how North Korea is using AI for bad?
Yeah, I do. There was a really famous one. There was a case of it's a U.S. publicly traded cybersecurity company, and they were hiring for remote workers. Remote workers are a thing, right? AI or not is a remote first company. We're hiring, by the way, and so a lot of companies are doing this, and they were interviewing someone, and it was a deepfake. They created AI generated pieces of identification, like IDs, and the person actually ended up getting hired. They got issued a company laptop, and the first day on the job, they plugged in a USB to try to inject malware onto that cybersecurity company's network. Only then did they find out that something was wrong, and then they went back and checked the content, and we actually have it right on our homepage as an example. And the selfie that presented was actually completely deepfaked and completely AI generated. So we could have saved them a lot of time, but they learned this lesson. Thankfully, nothing dire happened, but I just want to reiterate, this is a U.S. publicly traded cybersecurity company. This wasn't like a mom and pop shop. This wasn't like a regional bank. This was a really large, successful company, and they got fooled, and it was an operative for North Korea who tried to break this cybersecurity company's systems.
That's really interesting, and that 100% shows if it can happen to these big dogs, what can happen to the everyday folk.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Everyday folk, small and medium businesses. It's the number one employer of people around the world. So like you said, if a huge publicly traded cybersecurity company is susceptible, how about, the regular folk or normal business, smaller business owners? Like, do they stand a chance?
Stay safe out there, people. Protect yourselves, and don't trust your ears and your eyes.
Question everything.
And now let's hopefully move to something a little bit more productive that's happening on the space, even though it's a little controversial. Meta replacing, and this is caught on tape, Mark Zuckerberg is saying this on tape, mid-level engineers will be replaced probably in 2025 completely inside Meta. Do you know anything about this?
I think there's going to be an adjustment period for the global workforce for a lot of different areas, engineering being one. So much earlier in my career, I actually went through a coding boot camp, one of the best ones in the world. Took this upon myself to do it, and now I would argue all of those things I learned could very well be obsolete because AI can do it. I don't regret any of it, by the way, because I have a better understanding and not just trusting AI to do everything. But Mark Zuckerberg's point of AI being so capable of writing code that Meta, who arguably hires the best engineers in the world, I'm sure their bar is notoriously high, is saying now, wow, AI is just as good as this, if not better, and we actually won't need it, is a huge statement. There was another case that Salesforce, the leading CRM company in the world here in San Francisco, is saying we're not hiring any engineers, period, in 2025. So I think there's a lot to unravel there, that the AI is so good that you don't need as many engineers, and at some point you can argue you may not need any. Here at AI or Not, we definitely still have engineers, but they're all using AI to augment what they work on. So we use tools like Cursor to implement code faster, and it's like a thought completion process. It's a thought completion process to do it. And this is a funny story. I had a really big sales meeting with a huge Fortune 50 company this week, and I used AI to spin up a demo really fast, to do something very specific for their use case using AI or Not tooling, and creates here's how this would look like, and they're like, wow. And I built it with AI myself, never touched a line of code. I was able to read some of the errors, and my small amount of knowledge on the technical side, I was able to direct the AI of what could be happening, but no code written whatsoever. Spun up a demo for the meeting using AI or Not's APIs, and I think that's the future. You build something really great, you build the platform, or in the case of a lot of AI native companies, you build the AI models yourselves, but then a lot of the engineering work on top of that starts at worst augmented, and at best completely done by AI itself. And I think that what the CEOs, especially Mark Zuckerberg, who leads one of the largest tech companies in the world, is saying, I think is a huge signaling for the world at large of what's happening.
Getting back to the topic of the no-code tools, it seems like they're popping up more and more, and a lot of companies going this way. And what will happen to all the people that used to have those mid-level engineer jobs or those low-level sales jobs that are now being replaced with AI?
Yeah, I would like to push back on one thing. You said it's no code. So in my mind, no code is drag and drop, what you see is what you get type technologies, like that, like website builders. What's happening now is we're going a level above that. It is code. You're just not the one writing it. It is code. It's actually, you control it. Those no code tools, you had to play in their box. Here are the features. You can pick the order of those features. You can pick the order of how these things work and how you tie them all together. You want your blog to look like this, or you want your directory to look like that. Cool. AI, the world is your oyster. You're a developer. Whatever you conceive, you can honestly do. And you're right. There is, like I just said, I didn't write a line of code when I built the demo really quick, but it is actually code. You're just not the one writing it. You're writing in English. There's a famous quote by Kropathy that English is the most popular programming language. So that's really what it is. So so that's the one thing I'd push back on. It is actually code. You're just not the one. It's just AI code. As far as what's happening in industry at large, I think there's going to be a lot of changes for knowledge workers. There was an article this week that made the rounds that MBAs, even at Harvard, are having a hard time getting hired. So I think now there's an adjustment period of companies be like, how many new people do we need now that we're augmenting all of our work with AI and we're seeing incredible productivity gains? How many of this type of person do we need? So what the new workforce, I think, looks like, I think it'll be simplified in a lot of ways, meaning you're building / creating, or you're selling. And that's essentially what business is, right? You build a product, you sell a product. I think we're going to get closer to those kind of foundations. A lot of the things that will live above it, like reports and spreadsheets and charts, I think go away or get done by AI. And now on my phone, I can quickly, type like, hey, put a chart together of like what was happening with this data, or hey agent for this, like give me the analytics for what I'm looking for this presentation I have to do. And I think you're going to need a lot less people. Like my first job out of undergrad, for 2 years, I just built reports in a spreadsheet. That job, like I would not bet that job exists today, or if it does, it won't exist for much longer. So I think, as a workforce, there will be an upskilling or reskilling, however you want to define it, with these new tools of AI. And that includes for knowledge workers or any other kinds of workers. But I also think that a lot of areas in technology and related to AI are going to see an incredible boom. So there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment, but there's going to be an incredible boom as well in employment of once companies figure out what the new skill sets look like. So I think there's going to be a little bit of economic pain, but there's going to be a lot of gain to be had as well.
If you had to give advice, let's say to someone just going in and choosing their career path, let's say it's your son, what would you tell them to look for and to want to do in this new world where AI is everywhere?
Yeah, a really great question. I think about this a lot, actually. I would give advice on, every person, every child, every person's different, and we all have our strengths and our passions that should drive what we do as a career. I would argue you want to work on like some really hard foundational level problems like math, statistics. Engineering, I still think plays an important role. Somebody has to build the AI, right? That we all use. Really hard things. Or you want to work on really creative things too. So if you want to work on the marketing side, you probably want to get down to like sociology or psychology and understand things like that. I think design and UX will play an extraordinary role in the future as the cost of software goes down, meaning there'll be more software that goes up, and now the experience becomes much more valuable if there's more competition. So things like this. So you either want to be like foundational level, like really hard, zeros and ones type problems, or you want to be on the creative side. And I think those areas will never ever go away, because one, someone has to build the AI. If we're under the hypothesis that AI is going to take over a lot of the work that companies and people do today, someone still has to build AI. Someone still has to push it forward. And then two, at least I haven't experienced this, and I don't think this is where I don't think AI will be able to recreate is human creativity. I don't think AI will write the next Harry Potter. I don't think AI will write will create the next amazing movie. Like AI won't direct like Christopher Nolan does. Like it's not going to happen. You still need creativity from people to imagine what the world will look like. And I think those areas will never ever go away. And that's what drives people and humanity forward. And AI I think will just help us get there faster, but not do it on its own.
Thank you, Toli. This has been amazing. Everyone, see you next week with another episode.